Hey everybody, welcome back to the Skill Station. I have something super special for you today. We're going to interview a clinical coordinator over at Portland Community College, Robert Victorino. He recently did a case study on virtual reality training for his EMS students and the impact that it had. We have a whole case study to go over. So without further ado, I bring you Robert Victorino. Welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Devin. How are you?
Excellent, man. Excellent. So I'm super excited. I read the case study. It's incredible. We're going to show it to everybody, and we're going to put a link in the information so that way you can click and read the case study for yourself. Yeah. In the meantime, Robert, tell us about you and your college.
So I'm the clinical coordinator for the EMS and paramedic program in Portland, Oregon, Portland Community College. We are, oddly enough, the largest college in Oregon, and we train several hundred EMTs and about 25 paramedic students every year. And we have been developing a fairly, in my opinion, robust simulation program over the years, and recently added virtual reality to the platform. Okay,
so let's just start off the top. Adding virtual reality to a curriculum at a college, a community college no less. We all know that funding is not the same at the university level as it is for the community college level, but this is where all of our workforce is being trained and taught. Right. So how did you convince leadership, or how did you approach this whole idea of virtual reality?
I have to give credit where credit is due. This VR initiative came from the top down. Our president, Mark Mitsui, decided that he wanted to see how virtual reality could be integrated into our CTE programs. I am a huge component of the community college system. I think it is a life changer for a lot of first-time college families. I also think that it is the trade school of modern America. And President Mitsui had this idea of integrating virtual reality into the technical education programs, and we stepped up and volunteered our program to be one of the 2 programs that would participate in his initiative. And oddly enough, he just gave us the money, and so I didn't have to fight
too hard. That
I know, it was amazing. He said, "Here, let's make this work," and we ran with it.
Well, I think what this really speaks to, and I apologize for interrupting you. I'm very passionate about this, and I think that what you're speaking to is really it's a national push to have AR, VR, XR acronyms like included in what the college offers. But what I think is really valuable about what you have going for you guys is that you did it in a way that makes sense. You didn't just buy a virtual reality headset and then say, "Hey, we have VR." You guys started with your course curriculum and went, how do we fit it into our course curriculum, which I think is the correct way to do it. So I'm going to show a photo that you sent me. We're going to share this quick picture.
Absolutely. And we can talk a little bit about the origin behind that and how to fit.
How
we ended up fitting this in. So
how did you get to here? How did you get to this wonderful image? You have a student in virtual reality. There's an actual sim mannequin, plus you have a big screen, and someone looks like they're using the WebGL platform on there. So explain to me how you did this.
So we started, I've been going to IMSH and all of those healthcare simulation conferences for years, and I have the certification for healthcare educator. So we've been watching AR and VR develop and grow in simulation for healthcare. And we've been kind of hesitant because all of the platforms that we had seen were either nursing oriented or military oriented. There wasn't really something that was specific to EMS. So we had kind of watched it, growing in the background. And then I found this solution online, just searching. And with the new accreditation requirements under COAMS, well, not so new, but we have done face-to-face simulation for years at PCC, and with COVID and the inability to have large groups in small spaces, we had to find a new solution to be able to deliver the same content or the simulation content to our students in a format that would keep us from becoming a super spreader or something along those lines. And we, under President Mitsui's initiative, we acquired the 8 headsets and we started using them with the program that started, with the paramedic program that started in 2020. And we created scenarios on the VR patients platform. And I created accounts for all of my paramedic students, and I would meet with them and give them a headset. They would, to each one individually, they would take it home and they would complete whichever scenarios I had uploaded for that week. And then I would meet with the next one, and we just kept, handing them out and taking them back and handing it to the next person and taking it back. And then we started realizing that one of the drawbacks that I've seen with with virtual reality simulation for a technical career is that you lose the didactic portion. You lose the practical portion of the training. And we were looking for a way to incorporate the team member role into the virtual simulation. And so we just kind of organically grew this hybrid simulation that you see here in this picture, with our team leader in the blue scrubs is interacting with the avatar. And then we have the mannequin for the team member. And as the team leader delegates skills like an IV or a medication administration, the team leader is making the decisions and making the calls, and the team member is carrying out the patient care. So now, we can meet both of those needs.
So, Robert, you mentioned that a lot of the VR solutions and training solutions that you've seen, they're not really geared towards, they're mostly geared towards nursing. And I think what we're talking about is it's mostly geared towards long-term care versus emergent treatment care. Because I see lots of nurses, right, in the emergency department and whatnot, and doing emergent care, even sometimes writing on a box. But I understand what you're getting at, because we're talking a country full of first responders and EMS responders who need really solid emergency care. And this type of training that you're doing here, I see you're using the platform VR Patients, right? Which is what your case study is built on.
Right.
So the image that we're looking at here, can you explain to me how you created and developed this little scenario where you're using a combination between virtual reality and an actual sim mannequin, and how that relates to COAMPS and your certifications?
Yeah, sure. So we had initially started with the learners just using the headset on their own. And then once the college got to a semi-open stage where we were bringing students back onto campus, we were continuing the virtual reality simulation, but I noticed that we would have 1 or 2 students engaged with the platform and the scenario, and the rest of the students were just watching. And I wanted them to be doing more. The other component of that is that COAMPS does require, what it used to call the Appendix G, does require team membership simulation as well as team leadership simulation. And the virtual platform satisfies the team lead role. What we needed was a way to incorporate the team membership. And that's where we came up with putting a mannequin out and having the team member interact with the mannequin in the team member role. One thing that we don't see in this photograph is I usually will have 2 team members, because the patient care, the physical patient care of the mannequin loses the pair of hands that belongs to the team leader who's in the virtual space. Normally, Devin, if you and I were on the ambulance together, if I were running the call or you were running the call, we would both be physically doing tasks.
Yeah.
But in the VR space, those hands are taken out of the equation. So we had given them a second team member so that there were 2 sets of hands working to try to mimic as closely the efficiency of delivering patient care in the ambulance.
So, Robert, let me try to break this down a little bit. So I know that this is a staged photograph because you guys were working and you're like, hey, let's get a photograph of this really quick. But the general idea of what you guys are doing is that you have someone who is a team lead in VR performing the actions, and then you have someone, another student, who is performing the same actions on a sim mannequin, and they're kind of doing things together, and that's being casted to a screen so the students can all watch. And now you have the ability for virtual reality, but also hands-on sim mannequin, which meets the requirements of Appendix G.
Yes. And we can even flesh that out a little bit better, because one of the things that we really enjoy about the VR platform that we're using is that the scenarios are authored and grading criteria are set by me. So even though they are doing peer evaluations of each other, the team leader is graded in VR patients according to the rubric that I wrote into it. So when I document that stuff with COAMs, I can say, look, not only did we get peer-to-peer evaluation, but we also had the team leader being evaluated under the rubric that we authored into VR patients.
That's awesome. I think what's really cool about what you're doing is it's a unique way to utilize virtual reality, which has a large barrier to entry in education. People are so afraid that it's going to either replace faculty member or it's just going to change everything. They're like, why are we fixing this? It's not broken.
It's not intended to replace. It will never replace. It's just one other key. You know, we look at the learning process like, you know, a safe with many locks, and we got to find the right key to open up the learning process for any given student. And it's just one more tool that we're hoping, you know, maybe that one simulation will be the one that student remembers on his first critical stroke call. He'll be like, you know what? I remember that VR solutions. I mean, that VR scenario that we did. And I remember doing, you know, a LAMS, and I remember how I did my LAMS assessment. And I'm going to recall that. So it's not meant to replace. It's just one more key. You know, the other thing that I think is the other component that I think, you know, requires a little bit of explanation is the reason we went ahead and went through the trouble of getting it so that we could cast it was we could have the team leader in VR and the team member just with the mannequin, but then the team member loses the context of the scenario. And when we have it casted on the wall, then the team member can see exactly what's going on. We have buy-in. You know, we talk a lot about the suspension of disbelief in simulation. And the suspension is facilitated when the team member, even though they're not in the virtual space, they can see the simulation on the wall, and they know that the avatar is in a laundromat or, you know, street corner or wherever we've authored the scenario.
So let's go into this case study a little bit. Now, you guys had a challenge, which was attracting and engaging EMS students, but on their level, right? This is a new generation of EMS students. These are not just adult learners, which are a large population of people. There's firefighters that are upgrading to medic, right? So these people are coming back to school, but also we've got new students. They're young. And so what you guys have learned is that and they're getting younger. And so we know that they are well versed in mobile solutions. A lot of them have actually seen or even possibly used a VR headset before.
Oh yeah.
And if not, some sort of like AR with their phone and iPhones.
Right.
And so you guys, the solution for you guys was to use this platform called VR Patients to speak to those students and engage them. And we're going to pull up some numbers here because we're going to talk a little bit about the results of that, which is what this case study is.
Yeah, and you mentioned students that have experience with the technology. We even had students who asked if they could just log on with their own already owned VR equipment at home. So it's something that they're coming in with. And we have to evolve, or we're going to be left behind.
Okay, so Robert, let's get into this case study and talk a little bit about your challenges, the solution, and some of the results and maybe responses from students.
Yeah.
So this is the case study. And again, we're going to put the link to this available to people. So the challenges: attracting the EMS students who are a new generation of students who utilize virtual reality or are aware of it or have touched it and seen it before, and they need digital solutions as a part of their academic success and curriculum. And then the solution was utilizing VR Patients to address that problem and integrating that into the curriculum for your EMS students. and you're training EMTs and paramedics, or just paramedics?
So for the case study, this was done with just paramedics.
Okay, so you guys are training just paramedics using this particular case study. And then what you guys found was not only was VR Patients the only solution out there, because a lot of the other VR solutions are geared towards long-term healthcare versus this emergent healthcare need of paramedics or potentially even like resident physicians or emergency nurses. But the real meat and potatoes is the results. So let's just briefly talk a little bit about a lot of the information in this case study talks about how virtual reality has been proven to increase your success metrics and increase your retention of the learner. But for you guys specifically, your students had already used VR before and found that the platform was easy to use, that it assisted with their increased success metrics. It gave them the opportunity to practice more, that they felt that here's some direct student responses. Let's read these. So one student said, I think that for such a high-risk career path, expanding the use of technology to better set us up for success is quite helpful. And some people in this class have hands-on experience, but some don't. That's really fascinating, right? So that means that this allows students who maybe are super boots, right? And these other students who are a little bit more, maybe they're AEMTs, right? They're now upgrading to paramedic and their little experience. They both are on the same playing field, utilizing VR Patients and virtual reality training. And so another one is that something that this student noticed was that it was great for their personal learning experience, because when they used the stethoscope tool in virtual reality to listen to a lung, it was different depending on where they placed the stethoscope on the digital avatar, right? The patient, which is really detailed and granular medical accuracy.
It is.
Now, this student hadn't had a lot of opportunity to listen with stethoscopes before, so really was a stress-free way for them to practice, even though they're listening to digital sounds and recorded sounds. Right? They're still accurate and listening in the correct space versus the incorrect space, which is different than looking on a book and seeing an image of lungs with circles and dots and going, place it here, place it here. Well, when you look at a person's chest or back, everyone's shaped differently. And so
absolutely,
with this VR Patients platform, you can have, male, female, skin tones of different colors, different shapes and sizes of body types, which is like real world.
And Devin, here's another point to that. No matter how advanced mannequins get, it's still a mannequin. But the avatars look so real. And I've seen the videos that you do where you get right up close and you look right at them. When you are auscultating an avatar, the student has an opportunity to get used to being face to face, with something that is moving and interacting with them, as opposed to just a piece of plastic. So it's their very first opportunity to start getting used to invading the personal space of their patients and getting comfortable with presenting themselves as a professional healthcare provider, which
I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and that's a big change for EMS. One of the big changes is that, for years, all they really required of us is that we were good. But about 10 years ago, they decided that they wanted us to be good and nice. And
your bedside manner. Teaching
and assessing affect is difficult. And it's, a mannequin will always be a piece of plastic. And an avatar is moving and it's talking and its eyes look at you. And you're right. When you step in with that virtual stethoscope and you go to auscultate, you're face to face with it. And it gives the learner kind of a moment to say, okay, I'm putting on my professional healthcare provider suit. It's really neat.
Well, and what people aren't gathering through this interaction is that if you haven't used the platform before, you don't understand that when you get closer to the avatar, it gets louder, right?
Yeah.
It's spatial audio. So you hear their breathing, you hear their coughing or their whatever their signs and symptoms are, because you're getting in that patient's face just like in real life. Okay, so let's wrap up this case study really quick, Robert. So the solution that you guys used for your EMS students was VR Patients, the virtual reality training platform.
Yep.
You guys have 8 Oculus headsets, the enterprise version. Yeah. And I can see one of them behind you right over there. with a little cleaning station, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So virtual EMS training that can be built in minutes, endless customizability. So you guys are creating scenarios and building what your students need and tailoring that to your students' needs and their specific curriculum you're offering. And then you are assessing critical skills objectively, and you can deploy this anywhere, anytime. And the results of this case study are that you maintained a number of students with access to EMS training during the COVID shutdown. You increased student retention of case-based learning. You reduced instructor time. So you don't need as many instructors, or perhaps your instructors can focus on other high-level priorities while the student is going through a skills station, and the instructor can allow them to do that and be guided. And you've reduced the need to buy extraneous or extra equipment. Because let's be honest, these mannequins are like $90,000.
Yeah.
So I think if you could just briefly give me a reaction to these results, and then I'd love to hear more about the timeline that it took you to do this, and if you are going to continue to do something like this.
Yeah. So let's talk about the ability to create a scenario in the VR patients platform. I teach full time, but I still work on the ambulance. And if I run a great call on the ambulance and I think it's a fantastic learning experience, when I get back to the station, I can create that call in virtual reality and send it to my students before we're even back in class. I can send an email.
HIPAA compliant, isn't it? Right? Because it's completely de-identified.
Right. And I can send them an email and say, hey guys, I just ran a great call. Jump on VR patients and go run this call and tell me what you think.
That's amazing.
So I'm sharing real-time patient care experience with them online. It doesn't require them to be here.
And to be specific, you're logging in as an administrator instructor. You don't need a VR headset to create that. You're doing that on your laptop while you're out at the station, getting it done. And then you can, if you had a headset, you could test it and then ship it to the students.
I carry a headset with me when I'm on shift so that I can test it out, which I do. I go through, whenever I create a new scenario, I have to go through it several times to make sure that all of my if-then nodes are working correctly.
Yeah. And to explain to some people, what he's describing right now is called case logic, and it's essentially a decision tree. So you can set it so that way when if a patient does this, or if a student administers this medication, then this happens. And if it's the correct dose, the incorrect dose, like the instructor can set all of that.
Yeah.
All right. So that's awesome. What else were you going to tell me a little bit about your solutions and your results?
So one of the things that one of the difficulties we faced with the case study and the initiative in general was the initiative hit right when COVID hit. And so we had all of the stumbling blocks that came with trying to teach at the very beginning of COVID. And so our time to gather data for the case study was kind of compressed. And I'm really excited about being able to collect some data over time. I would like to see some information from cohort to cohort. And we are also moving this technology into the EMT program. So our EMTs who have no experience will get to try it out in the virtual space first as well. Our paramedic students, they're all EMTs, so they have had some experience coming into. You're talking
BLS versus ALS. You can create scenarios that don't require drugs. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we all know that BLS is the foundation of every ALS call. So we can run an ALS call where the only ALS thing about it is our thought process.
Sure.
But I'm really excited about bringing this into the EMT program that we just started for this term last week. Our plan is that we created some scenarios that are just get to know the avatar scenario, where I have one of the avatars, Joshua, walks them through how to find everything and how to make everything happen. And he talks to them as a teacher. He says, okay, I'm going to tell you how to do this, and we're going to try this. And so they learn they learn the platform, and then they get introduced to running a basic patient assessment scenario. So I'm really excited to see how people with no training respond to the virtual space. And the vast majority of them, when I go into the classroom and I go say, hey, you guys want to try some virtual reality EMS? Most of them are super excited.
Yeah, no one says no to that. Like,
yeah.
What? I get to put this book down? Let's do it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's such
Absolutely.
a neat thing.
All right, tell me a little bit about the timeline that you spent actually doing this case study, and are you going to do it more, longer? Are you going to continue measuring? What's going on?
So yeah, so we, like I said, our timeline was kind of compressed because of COVID. I think we only had, once the whole system was up and running, I think I only had 2 months and a single cohort, I think, of paramedic students to gather data. And with 8 headsets, I was kind of rotating them in. And then with, everything being done distance, I had to kind of rely on students to answer the online survey. And I couldn't sit them in the classroom and say, okay, log into this survey and give me these answers now, because I'm trying to collect them for this case study. So our intent is to continue to gather data as we go. We are in the final stages of building a multi-million-dollar SIM center here in our building that is for EMS. It has an integrated virtual reality suite, and the learning management system that we're using, the cloud-based learning management system that we're using, has the ability to monitor key performance indices. So we're going to continue to watch this stuff and see how it goes, as well as to monitor patients' subjective reaction to the virtual space. I'm looking forward to seeing them talk about the avatars by their first name. As I see students kind of make friends with the mannequins over time in the classroom, and I want to hear. I'm interested to see if they start talking about the avatars in the same way as if it's someone that they've made a connection with. And I bet that that's what's going to happen.
Robert, thank you so much for your time. I just have a couple more questions, and then we're going to let you get back to your students. So first of all, you have 8 enterprise Oculus headsets. We need to tell people, do not get the consumer grade Oculus headset. You need to have admin control over your Oculus headsets, and you do check them out. Is that right? Can you show me what you got?
Yes. So we have 8 Oculus headsets. They are pretty stout. We got them in the carrying case as well, so that we can hand them off to a student all in one package, so things come back as we sent them out to the student.
Right.
They also have the lining for students that wear glasses. And we initially had purchased a liner for sanitation, especially when we started this at the beginning of COVID. We quickly switched to I think it's infrared or LED based,
like cleaning. A UV light.
Yeah, it's a LED UV light based cleaning. I can put the headset and both controllers in the box, and it takes 60 seconds, and it cleans the headset and the hand pieces.
Yeah, that's called a clean box. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to say the name.
That's fine. Yeah, so we want people to know. We want people to figure out their resources and start building their VR studios. So you guys are using 8 enterprise headsets. You sanitize them using clean boxes. You have a space designated so that way it's a safe space, right?
Yeah. And I have a spot on a desk for units that have been returned, and then on the other side of the clean box, I have a space for units that have been cleaned and are ready to go out, so that we don't cross contaminate. Yeah. We use a sign in process and a sign out process. Because it's the enterprise version, it can be shut off remotely. So if a student has a problem with, maybe they experience a theft issue and they have something stolen from them, and a headset disappears, we shut it off and we can track it. And they're marked that says, low jack. It's not really low jack, but it says low jack.
It's a disincentive to sell.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's useless if you steal it. So and it's not even heavy enough to be a boat anchor. It's
all people need to know is that that's not a consumer grade. You can't get on the internet. You can't buy things on the Facebook store. If you steal this, you just stole paperweight, and it really disincentivizes people to take them home for any other reason.
It does,
education.
and it also, from another aspect of the security is that our IT department has admin access to these. I don't even have admin access. I can. Our IT department gives them to me with our VR patient software already loaded.
Right.
So I don't have to worry about accidentally doing something to them, accidentally deleting something or accidentally adding something. It is a standalone piece of equipment. And if I have a designated person, and if I need something changed, I email that person and he's on it immediately. But that way, for my own personal peace of mind, there is a stopgap between me and messing up the software that's in these.
So that's important for institutions to understand as well, that you have an IT person who has designated a certain amount of time to manage these, which is the same thing as handing out iPads to students at the college.
Yes.
And another thing that you touched on that I think is important is IT loads the software onto it, and then that's it. And when you create a case on your laptop, it gets pushed automatically to the enterprise headsets because they have to be connected to Wi-Fi in order to operate the cases. So when they log in and they connect, the new cases that you have created on your laptop are there, populated for them. So you don't need IT to help you build cases.
Nope, not at all. That's something that I do, like I said, on my laptop or here, in my office. When the student dons the piece of equipment, they log in to VR Patients, the software that we're using, and any scenario that I've created is already in their profile. It has nothing. There's nothing to do in this except for logging into their home network. That's the only thing they have to do is log into their home wireless.
Now, of course, we want to make sure that everyone understands that you have a bachelor's of computer science, you're an engineer, you're a coder, and you do software development. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to have all of those things, and you have to have a PhD in computer science.
Have you ever done any coding before? Do you have to do coding?
Never.
Like, what is it hard?
Never. I don't know anything about that. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to the guys the people who are installing our learning management system for our sim center, and they asked me about a piece of equipment, and I said I have no idea what any of those words mean. Any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah,
that's hey man, I look at it.
I don't want to make people feel like you don't have to spend time to learn how to build cases. Of course you do, but you don't need to have a CS degree or be a coder. It is drag and drop, fill in the blank. And the great thing about it is that you are a subject matter expert. I'm also a paramedic. I don't practice and do patient care anymore, right? But I still keep my certification active.
Right.
But the point is that you know the correct drug doses. You know the algorithms. You can build a case based on an algorithm.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really valuable for people to understand.
Absolutely can. And that's, I think that's one of the things that, this is one of the things that we're going to see. When we're looking at the sim center that we're building, one of the thoughts that we have is making it available to not just our students, but to our local agencies. If they want to do simulation for a protocol rollout, we want to make our sim center available to the agencies who hire our students. While we don't have any stake in this software, I think that we're going to see agencies utilize this software for the same type of thing, new protocol rollout. And especially when we start seeing training supervisors and medical directors who come from the generation of virtual reality, we're going to start seeing them ask, hey, I'm a doctor and I'm, of the VR generation, and I'm a medical director. I'm rolling out a new protocol. Let's get my medics into virtual space and have them practice this protocol in the virtual space, because we can do it with no risk. And there's so much more buy-in in the virtual space than the tabletop verbal scenario.
And you touched on something that a lot of people don't realize, and that's that, when I was writing along on the box, one of the people that I wrote along with was an emergency physician who wanted to become an EMS medical director, and he had to spend a whole year on the box.
Yeah.
And you know what? They would do this platform as well. Maybe it's more advanced, maybe the drug calculations and everything are a little bit more challenging, but that's something you can build out yourself. So I really think that it's pretty fascinating and pretty powerful platform. Robert, thank you so very much for your time. How can people get in touch with you if they have questions about how to do this on their end at their institution?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to field questions and talk to folks about developing simulation for their programs. My email is robert.victorino, Victorino, at pcc.edu.
All right, we'll put that in the information so that way people don't have to remember to spell it.
I think this is a fantastic tool to add, not to replace, but to add to your simulation program. So jump in with both feet and see how it works for you.
Last question I have for you.
Okay.
Do you have any tips or advice for someone who is looking to get their feet wet, meaning institutionally, another simulation coordinator somewhere? What would you tell them? Watch out for this. Make sure you don't do that. Make sure you do this. What would you tell them?
Don't try to build scenarios that are so complicated that you end up off in the weeds. You can create small simulationettes where you're able to create something that's manageable. The other thing that I think is a trap in simulation is that programs use it as a standalone thing, and they do it now and then. And the problem I see with that is that then the technology becomes the thing that the students talk about. You have to simulate to the point where technology is incidental. There is a point where the student becomes so used to the simulation technology that they stop talking about how cool the environment was in virtual space, and they start talking about what they learned about medicine. So you have to simulate to the point where technology is incidental, or the technology will be the learning point, not the medicine.
So how frequently do you utilize virtual reality in your course curriculum?
Every day. Every day I send them something. And if I have, right now my students are doing their ambulance shifts and they're not in lab very much at all, but I will still create a quick simulation and email it out, or send I don't email out the simulation. I'll send them an email and say, hey, I just added something in VR Patients, jump in and see what you think. And I try to keep this as playtime. I want it low stress. I want them to experiment with it. I want them to try it out. I don't like to make them, I don't want them to fear simulation. So I keep it as I speak about it in terms of play with this or try this out.
Yeah.
So that they don't become fearful of simulation. They don't experience test anxiety, because test anxiety is not helpful. I explain to them all the time that your brain needs oxygen to think. And if you're anxious, then your anxiety is taking up all of that energy that your brain needed. And test anxiety is just a precursor to call anxiety.
I think that's incredible. And what you're really doing is you're giving your students permission to fail. And
absolutely,
I tell students this all the
fail
time.
Here.
This is where you need to make a mistake, not on a real person.
Fail here where there is a safety net, and get comfortable with being putting on the suit of a professional healthcare provider. Because, I tell my students all the time that there is a very large percentage of EMS, and probably healthcare in general, but there's a large percentage of EMS that is just about looking cool. Because if you look cool, everyone around you will be cool. And if everyone around you is being cool, then you can manage the call. But if you panic, and if you're not comfortable in your role as the team lead, then everyone around you is going to be uncomfortable, and the call is going to fall apart. And when the call falls apart, there can be serious ramifications.
Well, Robert, this has been an awesome conversation. I feel like we could go on for another hour, but we got to cut this thing off.
I understand.
So thank you everyone for watching. You know how to get a hold of Robert. We're going to put information and links below. And we will see you next time, hopefully, Robert, when you have completed a full, let's say, 6 months of data collection.
Absolutely. We look forward to talking to you again about a little more robust information.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more about Portland Community College's innovations in EMS simulation. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.